Hello everyone, thank you so much for first of all coming today to the Rare Talks. I massively appreciate the opportunity to speak here. Today, as you know, the topic is inside the Gen Z mind, and my name is Jack Heyworth, and I'm going to be taking you through the journey of what the Gen Z generation thinks, looking at some of the big root cause and challenges, and then looking at some of the deeper, bigger picture things that we can start to implement in our day-to-day practice when we are approaching individuals who are Gen Z, or if you're Gen Z yourself. So, this is what we'll cover today. It will be a little bit of an introduction to me, my story, I guess why I got into this stuff and what I do. We'll skip the wake-up exercise, we'll go straight to why Gen Z. We'll start to understand what is Gen Z, why this is a specific generation that's, kind of pertinent to me. We'll go into the root causes, challenges, looking at finding a solution, and then looking at ideas moving forward and how we all can actively change the future for this generation. So, this is myself, the bottom one, not the top one. My background is, I was an individual who at a young age was a professional tennis player, kind of a very specific background. I was very fortunate to have success. I had money, I had kind of everything that you were told that you would want as a young individual. There was a hole in me. There was something that was left that weren't there. There was an emptiness, an abyss that wasn't being filled by all these things that culture dictated I would want. And it led me into a place where I was having challenges with mental health. I had a period of time where I felt definitely, probably diagnosably depressed. And through kind of a story of self-education and then now real life education, I've started to get to the point where I'm happier than I ever thought I could be. And along the way, there's been ups and lows and highs and whatever. But we're in a good place now, and now I understand the framework and the systems that are required to help people within my age group. My big influences that have led me kind of along this journey are people like Russell Brand, people like Jordan Peterson, people like Carl Jung, Sigmund Freud, Joseph Campbell, Philip Goff, all people who are looking into the depths of consciousness and the deeper rooted meaning of why we're here. Because sometimes for my generation, mainly me, I've always had that existential crisis. What is the point of being here? Why are we here? And I wanted to delve deeper and understand about that. The last bit is why I'm in any way, shape or form able to communicate this content. So at the start, I was what you'd call an autodidact, someone who is self-educated. I read all the books, every book I could physically get my hand on. I developed a great framework in my head. Then I went through the actual educational system, so psychology masters and a PhD in social change, anthropology and consciousness. So I'm a PhD candidate, I'm still working through that, and my specific area of interest is religious metaphor and allegory and its relation to modern day concepts of consciousness. So I've had the kind of expertise by experience, and now I'm trying to become an actual theoretical expert. What I personally do is I am a mindset coach. I go into schools, universities, corporate, and teach people one-to-one how to fulfill their potential. Yeah, it sounds super cliche, and I guess a lot of people are doing this type of thing, but the specific niche is relatability. I am young, I am within the vicinity of the age group I am approaching. This is what I'm really homing in on. This approach is an approach of each generation faces different and incomparable challenges. Trying to explain how our challenges are like anything related to going through a war is ludicrous. So we have to address them in different ways. So we're not the worst by any means, but we're the ones who are currently challenged in the field of mental health the most at the minute based on the statistics. Gen Z is a broad term. There's different terms and time frames that relate to it. In general, it's conceived as anywhere from 1997 to 2012 is the range of Gen Z, okay? We are categorized as the loneliest and most depressed generation there has ever been. This isn't me going, I think I'm pretty super depressed. This is the statistics. Only 45% of Gen Z feel they have good mental health. This is not good. This is not a good statistic. All the other generations that have been compared and comparable have been different to this. So, and exceed it much higher. So we're talking like mid-60s is pretty much the lowest that's next to this. So that's something to address. That's something we need to go, oh yeah, this isn't good. Let's try and address this the best we can. And yeah, the reason that I feel a little bit qualified to talk about this is I've lived the life of a Gen Z. I've lived this life. I am in no way a representative of Gen Z. I talk as an individual who is a privileged white male who now lives in Dubai and has tried to educate myself through this process. So that's where I'm coming at this from. But I'm on a journey of, I'm doing lots of research, trying to understand a broad field of what we can do to actively change, or at least in a small way, a small and integral way, change these things. So in general, what I would tend to go through is asking people what the differences are with like Gen Z. So this is something that I really like to talk about. We'll go here. These are the three big differences. I'm being broad here. This is a talk for about an hour, so I'm going to be pretty broad here, all right? Three big things. Social media, access to information. These are the two ones. I'm not like an anti-tech Luddite person. I understand the hypocrisy in saying tech is bad when I'm delivering a talk, which the information I gathered was through the internet, and now I'm using high-tech digital projections and a digital laptop in order to deliver it. So I'm in a position where I'm using tech to slag off tech, basically. So that's not where I'm going with this, but I'm just kind of addressing the challenges. Because we have to understand, if we live dislocated from the reality from which we were conceived, evolved, and some would say designed, there's going to be a disjunct, and we're going to have a bad time, as the dreadful gift suggests. And the final thing is culture. Again, this could be a hypocritical thing. Again, I'm very fortunate to be here. I'm in a privileged position, so not adversely affected by culture as many other people. But culture is still a thing that we have to look into, and we don't have to judge, we just have to observe and assess. When people think of Gen Z, they tend to relate to this topic. Social media. This is the big thing that since the kind of 2000s has been about, the early 2000s has been about. So it's really been and categorized our generation. Social media is a tricky one because it has many positives. For example, bringing all the people here from Radio Talks as a community together has happened through social media. Well, at least that was my perspective. I came to this through social media. However, social media is not necessarily a good representation of people are. Social media is a profit-based platform. It's something that requires profit, and it works on something called an AdSense system. So in order for them to be a good company, they have to make money, which is exactly what they should be doing. But in order for them to make money, they have to get the most engagement possible. The most engagement possible, unfortunately, starts to be where the challenges are faced. Because social media is designed to stimulate, inculcate the lesser tendencies that we have. Because as human beings, we operate on the basis of fear and desire. Fear is the thing that we had to use in the past. There's a tiger over there, let's run, we're on the plains, we've got to get away from it. And desire, let's go kind of find and feed and procreate. That was the aim behind desire. Unfortunately, we have to react a little bit stronger to a tiger over there than a berry bush on the other side. So fear is our stronger tendency. It's the thing that we're going to react to more. Unfortunately, this is what the algorithm of social media platforms is based upon. It has to create tension. It has to create disconnect in order for there to be more engagement and in turn have more ads and create more profit and revenue. And this in turn creates division. It starts to make people think they're more different than what they really are. My best friend is called Tarjan. He is the polar opposite to me. I am a white male who comes from a relatively privileged background. He is from Sri Lanka, a black male who's come from a lesser background, was kind of an immigrant into the UK. And in reality, what's crazy is if you look at us superficially, we're polar opposites. Yet in reality, our deep underlying truth is we're both trying to just help people. We're both trying to create love, union, togetherness in everyone's lives as best as possible. Yeah, we're expressing it in different modalities and forms, but that's okay. That's absolutely okay, but we're in reality closer than we can ever think. The second part of this is virtual connection. This is the idea that the more we get connected, the more alone we become, okay? The connection we have on social media isn't real. It's fake. It don't operate the same way it does when we're having a face-to-face interaction. And social media, it connects you to everyone except from the people where you are, which is something that's really kind of important to recognize, because as human beings, connection is beyond a 2D screen. Like, it's beyond this. It's a sensory experience. I mean, we've lived the last 2 years on Zoom. Like, going through COVID-19 has been a challenging time for everyone involved. And as we know, those times were very challenging, not just because of you having to stay at home and you're kind of dislocated from everyone. You're operating on a screen. It ain't the same. There's something subtly different about it. And what's really interesting is this kind of virtual connection and this kind of dislocation from what's actually happening, which is kind of created with social media to a point. Like, me as a kid, like, I was growing up when in the world there was bits of like Genesis happening, there was bits of apartheid, and I'd go to sleep and I wouldn't think, oh no, like all these bad things happening. I'd get more like annoyed when I get charged extra an ATM than when something drastic in the world is happening. This level of disconnect is really important to recognize, because the more disconnect we are, the more we're going to kind of perceive our bubble as what reality is, and it's not the case. There's many people across the whole planet. The next part of this, as I've already mentioned, is advertisements. Ads are one of the things that, the way that kind of platforms make money, essentially. And ads have evolved through the years. They started off as those annoying little pop-ups that you try and click the 4 different X's to try and close the thing. And they've developed to the point where now people are advertisements. I would say, especially in my friendship group, at least 50% of people are promoted or endorsed or sponsored by a product. So then in themselves are a walking advertisement. That starts to shatter the illusion of real connection. Because what actually happens is this person trying to sell me something? I don't know. It shatters the illusion of connection. So this virtual connection, it don't work for us, it don't function for us. And overall, what does this do? It warps reality. You know, we can question what is real all day long. I'm of the kind of perspective that all we actually know is we're having a sensory, conscious experience. Beyond that, we don't necessarily know too much of what's going on. Social media warps this even more. On social media, if I put a post up, for example, I am not only selecting the best picture out of 20, I'm also then putting a filter over that picture. I'm also only taking that picture at a time when I'm feeling the happiest. I ain't taking it when I'm feeling sad, because, you know, why would I? I'm taking these in the most promoted point possible. When you're seeing this as a consumer or someone who's also on social media, you're going to start to realize that, oh, all these people on here, on this platform, they're like beautiful people, they're really rich, they're really happy. Like, why am I not like that? I feel like worthless. Why am I so disconnected from all these people? This is such a big challenge because we're in the era of comparison. We're constantly comparing ourselves, and unfortunately we're playing a game which we can never win. The game of who's the richest, who's the best looking, who's going to be the most talented. Unless you're the 0.0001%, these games ain't going to resolve the issues, and you're constantly going to be yearning for something that you're not getting. The only game we can actually win is becoming the most authentic version of ourselves, the most you version of you. And then the final part of kind of how our realities are being warped is distraction. At the end of the day, I will talk a little bit more about kind of the depths of what we need to be yearning for, but social media is a distraction platform. For example, myself, I spend an average of 9 hours a day, which is horrendous when I actually look at it now on paper. It's really, really bad. It's 50% of my waking hours. This is not good. This is not good. And obviously with the people who are going to watch this, a lot of psychologists, you're going to understand that that's going to affect how people form schemas in their mind. Schemas are like ideologies and our representation of the world. If we're tuning into our phone 50% of the time, what does that do for how we see reality? It changes our view of the world, it changes the view of our health. And this is the time where Gen Z, and this is why it's a pertinent topic, are going through their developmental stages. If you're going through developmental stage and half of what you're seeing ain't real, or ain't as real as this, like your reality is going to be so warped in so many different ways. And we're doing all this damage, And we have to question, okay, well, maybe there's some like positives that outweigh it, okay? Because we've got to look at this in a really neutral point of view. I don't want to be an attacker of anything at all. I want to approach this in a neutral way. We've got to ask ourselves, for what? Yeah, of course, there's the kind of advertising element. We are all have platforms there to kind of a profile to promote who we are. But ultimately, most of the time I actually spend on social media is, for me, it's self-torture, it's monotonous, endless scrolling, it slowly numbs your brain into submission. It becomes a habit, an automated response. The other day I was doing PhD work and I kind of blacked out for a second, and before I knew it, I was scrolling for Instagram. I didn't consciously do that, I promise you. It was something that, it was an automatic response. Whatever happened sent me to that place, which is kind of like scary. It's really scary. And I'm sure everyone kind of watching this can understand how uncomfortable they feel when they don't have their phone on them. I am forever looking at where I have placed my phone. If I have misplaced it somewhere, I'm forever trying to understand where that phone is, because it's part of me now. You know, we operate in a symbiotic relationship with our technology. We are one with it. And that's quite scary. That's quite a scary concept, because the more we're one with tech, the less human we become. So we start to live this life based on consumerism, commercialization, commodification, and all these superficialities distract us from deeper truths, which we'll talk about a little bit later. I guess it's most interesting as well, because if for a moment you compare something quite potent like alcohol dependency, which is something that's like, from where I'm on, it's quite rife. If you compare it with that, like alcohol dependency, it kind of ruins your life. It's pretty obvious, like you start to be dependent on this thing that's ruining your life. Whereas social media is very subtle. It's really subtle. You don't really notice it because it's just part of life. You don't go, oh, like I'm actively doing this thing that's damaging me. It just seems like it's part of life, which is, again, scarier than something that's more superficially potent. Access to information, again, I understand, like I've gone through this process and I'm in this privileged position because I've had access to information. There's a beauty behind having access to information. And in my hand, in my fingertips, I have more access to information than a president did 25 years ago. This is pretty crazy. Like, that's crazy that that is the case now. So, like, I'm sure there's people in here that, you know, want to buy something in the near future. Maybe they want to have a look at the many options on Amazon or any other available platforms. The challenge is, because there is so much choice, it then starts to, you can't make an informed decision based on what's going on. No informed decision can be made. So you'll probably end up picking the thing that you recognize by brand, or the thing that has a dog on it. That's like the most probable thing going on here. And with great information comes, I guess, great responsibility, as the adage from Superman suggests. There's a magnitude of information that ain't good. It ain't good out there. It's either promoting a specific agenda based on like a sponsorship, or it's someone who doesn't necessarily know what they're on about. My buddies are in the world of fitness industry, and they're always making these videos. I think, how do people not know this now? And the people don't, because there's so much opposing information out there. And obviously, like most of the people here and most of the people who are going to be watching, like broadly, you're probably able to filter the wrong information. Oh yeah, that's like rubbish. And you can kind of understand what's good also. This is the issue with like me. I can't do that because I'm just so susceptible to the constant stimulation, TV ads, text messages, non-stop. I don't have the ability to filter this information. And I'm not going to speak on like terms of like a generation, but I think this is a common problem that we're consistently seeing. We ain't got the ability to filter this kind of stimulus. The final challenge is culture. Like, I don't think it's outlandish to say we live in an economic culture. You know, it's driven by like money, the pursuit of profit. And this has to be our kind of primary focus. Like, ultimately, yeah, we can't be here unless we've got some money to be able to afford to live, to eat, to drink water. That's like the basics of human life. So with this concept, and I'm not saying this has to change, but it certainly affects what our priorities are. We have to prioritize something that's external to us, separate. It ain't necessarily something that's human as well. It's not like something natural, like a hunting or gathering type thing. The second aspect of this is broadly, Gen Z have a lot of chronic stress. There's lots of information that suggests this. And some of this chronic stress comes from really external factors like ecological worry, environmental crisis. These are things that we're actively worried about as a generation. It's really like scary because we're starting to see stuff that's irreversible. As soon as the word irreversible happens, you're like, this ain't ideal, this is not good. And it's something that we feel responsible for and we feel like we're not going to be able to have much of an impact in. So again, this is something that we have to subtly understand when addressing a young generation who are being brought up in a world which has started to be dysfunctional environmentally. The next aspect of this is the efficiency first model of culture. You know, due to efficiently, jobs tend to be broken down into constituent parts. Who knows someone who actually makes a full bike anymore? No, you're the guy who puts the pedal on the bike. So we're disconnected from the full process of what goes on. What does that lend us with in terms of looking for purpose, in terms of looking for meaning? You're the guy who just does the little flick on a paint job of a bike, as opposed to someone who's completing the whole process, and that's based on efficiently. And then finally, as I was chatting about earlier today, we're in the era of empiricism, objectivity, things that are like real, that we can touch, that we can tangibly feel. And empiricism tends to shut down debate and open discussion. And I think it forgets the fact, or it assumes that the present field of knowledge is total, or it is not. Like, at the end of the day, we're all human beings with a limited senses. We have sensory apparatus which is limited. Our eyes can only see within a certain light range, from ultraviolet to infrared. Our ears can only hear a certain frequency, from 20 to 20,000 hertz. This is pretty narrow. If you think about the spectrum of what could exist, this is pretty narrow. We have to take reality by piecemeal. It has to be palatable for us to even comprehend. There's light bouncing around everywhere here. We're taking in specific elements of that. And I know obviously a lot of people here, like, we talk about energies and stuff like this. Of course these things exist. There's light bouncing around everywhere right now. We just can't see it with our sensory apparatus. So it's important to kind of remember. The solution seems a lot to take in, man. Like, how are you going to resolve these things? Like, what have you got to completely flip society on its head? Like what have you got to do? So I think the key broadly is creating a futuristic path towards traditional ideals. This community right here, we are individuals who are essentially doing the same thing at a really base level. We're all yearning for love, union, togetherness, trying to make people happy. That's the core of what we do. With the modern generation, we have to use the essence and the greatness that all people have and the gifts that everyone kind of watching this has. But we have to put it forward in a way where it's recognized by young people. Because unfortunately, and again, I'll talk about this a little bit later, when you start to talk about spirituality or God, for example, or energies or crystals, people, and as I speak as a Western individual, start to check out. They don't want to listen to anymore. And it's because that's kind of the way they feel against that subject. When we can start to bring tangibility to these things and start to, capture an emotion that I'm sure you all do, we can start to actually implement change. So we'll break it down into 3 specific topics that we're all aware of here: awareness, meaning, and connection. So awareness is something that we're all pretty aware of, ironically. We need to understand what's going on. So the 4 ways that I feel we definitely need to do this is meditation, understanding yourself, understanding the world and the culture, and keeping a broad and open mind. For me, meditation is one of the most important aspects of my life. It changed everything when I started to delve deeper into it. It really did. Through meditation, I can, or one can temporarily break the bonds that chain us to the mundane, the mondial, that which is of the earth. And temporarily, at least, we can receive a taste of something that's beyond the superficial, a taste of the infinite. And through meditation, this is the first step. We have to sometimes detach from the matrix and the cyclical pattern of thought, the thoughts that never end, the thoughts that continue. For me as well, meditation, it helps me observe and identify like any form of negative voices. And again, it breaks down that cyclical pattern of thought. One of my spiritual teachers from the US told me that 90% of thoughts we think today, we'll think tomorrow, and we'll think the next day. Because your brain's a problem-solving machine. It's going to constantly try and resolve the issue. How can I resolve this issue clearer and clearer and clearer? Unless we do something to break the cycle, break that chain of thought, maybe look at something from a new perspective, we're going to continue to have those thoughts. So meditation is the perfect opportunity to do this. Then we've got the very complex part of understanding who you are. Who are you beyond your name, beyond language, beyond the sights that you see? Who is thinking the thoughts? Who is seeing the sights? Who is hearing the words? These are things that we take for granted and we don't actively attempt to resolve. We just assume, oh, I'm a human being, I'm going to go about my day. We don't delve deeper into the why. Because just behind each and everyone's eyes, there is awareness. There is something that is seeing me right now as I am seeing you. It's something that we all universally share, but we embody with a different experience and perspective. We have to start to understand ourselves beyond the primitive desires that we have, the fear, the desire. We have to understand ourselves beyond this and look at ourselves not in a way that is perfection, which social media would probably dictate we can achieve, but through a sense of trying to become whole, trying to involve all areas of your life, trying to involve all the negative aspects of you, every single thing. Don't oppress anything. Try and be whole as an individual. As I said earlier, one of my big influences is I like that guy called Carl Jung. And he talks about like, you've got to understand your motivation for things. You've got to really understand where these motivations are coming from. Is it the primitive aspect of you? Is it, oh, I need that chocolate bar? Is that a primitive thing? Or is it something that you're actually yearning for? And trying to be aware and dislocate these two things that are going on right now. The final part of being you is understanding, we're flawed. Like, I'm super flawed as an individual. I'm sure everyone could admit their failures. I'm flawed, I'm fallible. I have massive limitations as an individual. But I accept that. That's all good, man. I can accept that. The aim is to try and be better every single day. Act in a way that's going to be of betterment to people and your community. And the final aspect of this is when you understand yourself, it's easy to kind of think, well, what's the difference between me and everyone else? I'm just kind of same. I'm just this little person in this like massive world. The beauty about people is, like, by definition, we're all unique. We all offer something that's unique. And the most valuable thing we have is the fact that we're offering a unique perspective. No one else is seeing your sights. No one else is doing that. It is only you. No one else has the lineup of experiences that you have. The perspective and experiences together means you are offering something that's unique to the world. Unique to the world. No one else has that. And maybe it's a load of rubbish what you think, but something in what you're saying could be a small integral piece of the puzzle that might aid someone in a beautiful, effective way and starts to bring us together as a community. The second part of this is, unfortunately, we ain't just living in these little bodies in some orbing thing. We're in culture. We're operating in the world right now. So we have to understand how cultures influence you, how the ad industry is a multi-trillion-dollar industry. It's for a reason. They ain't just putting these ads up for nothing. It's because it influences your behavior. It affects how you operate. So you have to start to go and understand, okay, I'm in this world which is trying to sell me stuff all the time. Let's try and separate from that. Let's try and get introspective, be a human being beyond the superficialities. I've got to buy this, I've got to do that, I've got to do this other. Separate from it. This is important for us all to do. And the final aspect of this, and this really delves deep into the Gen Z part as well, we have to keep an open mind to all new ideas and possibilities without judgment. This era that we're in, there is so many ideas, there is so many things that are currently going on. We have to hold a broad understanding and understand that all perspectives could be correct. All we truly know is conscious experience. This is all. okay? So it's really important for us to recognize that. It's really important. So the second part of this is meaning. This is where I get a little bit airy-fairy because I love this stuff. I really do like this stuff. I think it's one of the things that I really struggle with. I was just a person who was like, well, I'm just a little individual. What effect can I have on, not even on the world, just what can I even do here? What's the point, man? What am I here for? We have to create some form of meaning in our life. Most of us worry, or at least I can speak for myself, worry about how I'm spending this precious life that I've been fortunate to have. Like, you know, it's a 400 trillion to 1 odds that you're even alive on this planet, so it's pretty cool that you've made it this far. And I don't want to have a pitiful trudge towards the grave in pursuit of money. I want to live something beyond that, something deeper than that. And this is where meaning comes in. And I believe to have meaning, we have to connect with something that is higher than us. And I'm talking, of course, like about a spiritual or religious idea, and not necessarily in like what many people like from the Western world will perceive as like a doctrine way or a dogmatic way. There is something in you that you're trying to find, that you've always been trying to find. There's something there. We all have it. We all have that thing that we're trying to find, and it can't be found externally. What's interesting with the thing that we all have that thing, as I say, that we're trying to find. We all most of us actually deep down, if we get introspective, we kind of understand what we have to do. Most of the people here that I've spoke to in this community, they're talking about energies, they're talking about deep introspective thought that help them channel their lives in certain ways, and they're spreading that beauty that they've understood in a way that is representative to everyone. The last words in the Bhagavad Gita are, I remembered. It's all in there. It's all already present. We don't need to search for too much else. It's all there already. We just have to connect to that meaning. So yeah, overall we have to connect to something beyond our little individual lives. And definitely in Western culture, we have to get over the idea that like God is a dirty word. I was chatting before about when you mention God, it's perceived as like, as soon as you talk about God, spirituality, crystal, you know, all this stuff, it's just people check out, man, gone. They don't listen to what you're saying. And it's because they've got the idea of these kind of picture-like cartoons in their head of someone smiting someone else, and they've got these different representations. Personally, I believe in God, like not necessarily a tradition like Abrahamic, Islamic, or monotheistic religion, but a limitless benevolent force or consciousness that we are all subtly connected to. The consciousness in me right now, this conscious experience, me looking at you through my eyes, I believe that it's pretty similar to what you guys are all having, with the obvious variance of perspective, your amalgamation of experiences, and there's probably some biochemical elements in there as well. But deeper than that, it's pretty similar. Like we're all deep down infinitely more similar than we are different. So it's important to like recognize that, and that is like something that can start to help us believe or understand what God can represent to people who don't want to believe about the dude in the sky or the person with an elephant head. They don't want to delve into that. Let's kind of create a concept that's more traditional. Yeah, let's go through that approach. I specifically believe in something called perennialism, which is like beyond the superficialities of like monotheistic faith. I don't think about, oh, well, this God or that God. I don't go, oh, well, one's doing it better than the other. I just go, oh, okay, there's something going on here. There's running parallels across all these religions. Each one of us here will be practicing in different ways, and yet subtly we're all saying the same thing, man. We're all getting down to the points of love, union, togetherness. These are all the things that kind of bind us all with what we're trying to do. Personally, I believe, and I'm doing my PhD research on something called panpsychism, and it's the premise that everything is God in a way that we are all one. We're all connected to each other. Yeah, we're separated by the superficialities of these flesh puppets, but deep down, you know, as we've already discussed, there's light bouncing around everywhere. There's photons flying through me and you. There's all these things that connect us in an infinite amount of ways. There's Wi-Fi connected to this laptop. We can't see it, but it's all going on right now. There's stuff that's connecting us all in a unified and beautiful way. So, yeah, to me, God is unity. The reason, like, love, if you've ever felt it, feels so good is because it's a kind of, like, it's a truth. It's something deep in you. It's like, it's a connection that's deeper. And when scientists, not me, analyze the mythology and theology behind words like love and God. The common theme that's always comes forward is union, togetherness. Like, these are the things. We're all just trying to be part of the same thing, you know. We're all just trying to be connected to nature in some way. Like, this is it. So what's interesting about like meaning, and I guess I've talked a little bit about connection as well, is these ideas like aren't just useful to us as people who are into spirituality and into like stuff that other people would boo-hoo. They're important to everyone because we're all human beings. We all need to have this little pang of connection to something. Otherwise, I get why life feels meaningless. I felt it, man. I felt the meaningless life. I thought, what is the point in this? Is it like, what am I just supposed to do? Trudge along in this meaningless thing? When you start to believe that you're connected to something deeper, more divine, that perhaps the small incremental things you do can affect people in a positive way and subtly ripple out and change culture, this is delightful. We don't all have to, you know, for me, like at the start, I'm sure where we've all started from, you want to impact the world. You want to go like, I want to help everyone on this planet. I want to do all the good things. And in reality, us being a community and being together, we're doing that as one. You know, it ain't about like different people here. It's as one. We're all doing this as the same thing. As long as we can promote the same message, it don't matter if it's in different ways. We're going to start to see the echoes, the ripples of what we create. And this is the generation, this is why we're doing this. Like, this is the generation that like actively need the expertise that are in this room, the expertise that are watching right now, because that's what it's about. It's about delving to something and promoting a message that's beyond something they're gonna obtain. This is like the overview, because we've spoken about a lot of different things. And like, for me, what's important is like, you know, we've gone from the point of, okay, what's the root causes? And then we've gone to the other extreme of like, let's talk about deep ideas, this stuff that's like, stuff that excites me at least. So we have to overview and understand how we can practically like implement these things. I'm sure with every single person all these professionals have worked with, it's a case of you have to help people understand who they are, beyond materialism, beyond superficialities. Who are you beyond your name? We have to help people do that, okay? But in a way that's gonna be useful to them. We have to help people find like-minded communities, like Rare Talks right now. We joined this because we wanted to be engaged with people who are real, who think the similar thoughts than us, who are helping promote what we care about. We have to do that. And the final aspect of this is connecting to our higher purpose. So, hilarious little gif. What can we all do? Like, what can we like actively do here? It's, of course, this talk isn't like directed at youth, because I've talked about like quite complex ideas. I think that like you have to kind of really understand a little bit to kind of go, oh yeah, that kind of makes sense. But the stuff that we've talked about today, it should be the foundations of like, from the side of the educator, these should be the foundations that we're like subtly trying to implement in a connecting and I guess engaging way. So number one, we have to have like open discourse and communication with people. We have to, again, be open to all ideas, all thought processes. Whatever anyone says, before we shut it down, we have to understand that we as human beings have limitations. We don't know everything. I've got like a really clear like understanding in my own head about how things work. I could be completely wrong, man, as we could all be. So the more open-minded we can become, and the more we can take little snippets from people and go, oh, I really like that thing that someone said, I like these things, then we can start to come together and create an ideology that isn't about the superficialities, but is deeper than that. It's about the key messages. The second part of this, and this is the most important part, is stuff has to be engaging, man. It has to be engaging to people who maybe wouldn't necessarily be engaged with it. Unless we're speaking with vigor and passion and flair, people of my generation, they don't care, man. They got the attention span, as I do, of this little dog who's like doing this. Like, it's such a short attention span. We have to really like try and get in someone's head. We have to really kind of think, okay, how can we draw attention quickly and in a really informative way? The second part of it is, as you can see from my presentation today, I put this stuff in. Like, for me, I really want everything to be super professional. I want everything to be perfect. I've got to put this stuff in, the gifts in, because as I say, we've got a short attention span, man. So you've got to have like stuff that's drawing attention quick, that makes people actively engage. Usually most of these talks tend to, like, I'm really keen on doing like 3 or 4 activities. We've not done that today because it's a mostly virtual presence, but this is really key. We have to start to get people actively involved, get the focus on you so you can kind of implement change for people. And the most important thing is we have to create tangibility, because when I listen to like all these talks and stuff, I love it, man. I love hearing all the different opinions, energies, like self-love, whatever it is. I love hearing all these things. I'm like, whoa, that's amazing. Unfortunately, a lot of people who are like Gen Z, as soon as you say one thing that sounds spiritual or sounds what they would quote as like airy fairy, it's checked out. They've checked out straight away. So for us, we have to understand that the stuff we talk about is actually quite complex. You know, it's quite deep, it's complex, man. So we have to bring simplicities to this. Like, we have to bring routine and purpose to this. And we have to ultimately capture the mood of a generation. You know, we have to capture the mood, and then where our skill set can align with that mood that's been created, then we're going to have actual function. The first step in actually changing the world, as many as you like watching will want to do, is we have to have individual awakening. Yeah, we have to have individual awakening. There's a great quote by Solzhenitsyn, which is like, the lines between good and evil run not between cultures, religions or creed, but through every human heart. So when we can start to delve deep into individuals, help individuals understand the depths of all this complex stuff that we're talking about, perhaps they can connect to who they are, perhaps they can connect to something beyond that, but more importantly, perhaps they can just live a life that's happy, man. Because the sad thing is, like, with what I do, I'm getting like hundreds of messages a day, and I'm like, this is scary. This is like, it really like, it does worry me. Like, don't get me wrong, I have lots of hope, I have faith, but it worries me with how many people are outreaching with struggle and challenges who are part of this generation. It's really scary. So, and then the final thing is the stuff that people do on a day-to-day basis, like kids in schools, people at like employment, you know, people in universities, one-to-one. The boring stuff, like, you know, you've got to send emails, you've got to do that bit of homework, you've got to attend that lecture. This is the stuff that is boring to people. Like, you know, maybe when they're there, like, oh, this is cool, but they don't want to actively do it. We have to help align whatever we do with their purpose. It has to all be personalized. Unless people give a monkeys about like why you're telling them stuff, they won't do it. Unless you can relay, well mate, if you do these daily habits on a day-to-day basis, well, this might lead to that feeling that you want. For me, I know some people have been to Bali in this room. For me, I remember there was this moment in Bali when I was in like a thatched roof little hut. I was in the forest, and it was like next to like a Buddhist temple, and I was just in this 4-poster bed, and I was sat next to like my ex-girlfriend, and we had like hands, like holding hands, and the rain was like tapping on the ceiling, the roof, and like I just remember in that moment, I just felt like oneness, peace, serenity, like the separation between me and my ex-partner were like, it didn't exist, it weren't real. We felt in that moment the exact same thing, the exact same emotion. That emotion for me is what drives me, because I want to feel that. That's all I want. I just want to be happy, peaceful, serene, and I want other people to feel that, but as best as they humanly can. Because what you'll find is when we all work with people, as soon as you start to pull any thread, any subtle cord of anxiety or depression, it starts to expose the fragility of the fabric of their reality. When you start to pull one thing, it starts to make people go, what is real? What is going on right now? So we've got to be really like empathetic and careful with what we do. And we have to be really like clear on the words we say, because what we're doing has like such an impact on people. Overall, the premise of this talk is about Gen Z, the younger generation from 1997 to 2012. As I say, it's not because they're any worse off. It's not because their challenges are worse than anyone else's. It's because they're different. They're incomparable. So we really got to try and address the people who are in this age group, because they're the future, man. That's what it's about. They're the future. So, you know, my aim as an individual and what I'm doing myself is channeling the expertise of people like yourself, people watching, through like a young mouth, through a relatable mouth, because it's a little bit easier for someone to comprehend complex ideas sometimes with someone like me who's like, I'm still figuring it out, man. I don't claim to be an expert like a lot of people here. I'm still figuring out, I'm still going through that journey. And that's sometimes quite relatable. So as long as we can start to strike a chord with younger people and start to have a real focus and target on like, let's address younger people now, because people in their 30s, 40s, they are starting to like wake up to these ideas. I'm sure if you actively work with them, you're starting to see they've lived a little bit more, so they go, yeah, I've tried a lot of other things. We have to address this younger target audience. So like, that was kind of the main premise of today. It started with the root causes behind like what we're all doing, and then delve deeper into the spiritual stuff that, you know, kids like me tend to not talk about, but it's incremental, it's crucial. So like, cool, man. Thank you like so much for attending, especially obviously virtual people as well. If you are interested in not just what I do, but like being part of like a community that's like harnessed around young adults, like one of the things I'm trying to do at the minute is bring people of the expertise, for example, in this room to a younger audience that I'm working with, for example, in schools, universities and stuff. If you are interested, like follow me, hit me up, message me, and we can kind of talk about how we can start to bring these complex ideas into youth and how we can start to change the angle of what we're all doing here. So yeah, thank you all for listening. That's me done now. I'm all good. So I really appreciate it, and yeah, I wish you all the best, and we'll chat as soon as the video turns off. Thank you.